Hello, my little goblins. We're back at it again, and this time we're doing a tier list for the ban list coming up August 31st, and we're going to be going over the decks I think are going to be the best decks in the format, and we're going to say what decks got weaker. So this is a pretty long list, as you can see here. This person created it, so say thanks to that person. But yeah, we're going to go through each one of these decks. Some of these we're going to go by quick. Some of these will spend a little more time. So that's what to expect. Alrighty, first things first, we're going to go over what each tier means, because I think it's very important before we start diving into these, so you guys can understand why I'm placing them there. Okay? Tier 0 means it is the best deck of the format. There's no contest. There's really no deck that really stands up to it if the person's playing it correctly, and it does well going first, second, doesn't matter. It's tilting to play against. Think of tier limit when they first drop. So tier limit when they first drop with the Ishizu cards was probably the pretty much tier. That was tier 0, like by far, in my opinion. Deck was insane. So that's what to think about. Tier 1 means it is the best deck. There could be more than one tier 1 deck. It just does way better. It's more consistent than all these other decks, and that's pretty much the basis of that. Tier 2 means it's a very good deck, but it's just not quite up to snuff with the tier 1 decks. But it's still a very consistent deck, and their power levels still on par. Pretty close to the tier 1 deck, but there could be a little more chinks in the armor, right? Then tier 3, we would say tier 3 is just a good meta deck. You're gonna see this deck a lot. The deck can win tournaments, but it's nowhere near the power of like tier 1. Like, it's just not near the power of tier 1. It's good, it's a good deck, but it's just not at this level. Rogue tier is going to be, a lot of these decks are going to be rogue tier. It's pretty much a outlier deck. Not many people are playing it. It can do well if it's piloted well, but it's just kind of meh. You know what I mean? Like, there's still there's a ceiling. So like if you're like really nasty with the tier 1 deck and someone's really nasty, like they're both on equal skill levels, obviously there's other things that come into play where a rogue deck might be a good counter to a tier 1 deck, or like have good outs to it, I guess. But for the most part, if they're both equal playing field, tier 1 deck's going to stomp on the rogue deck, because the tier 1 deck's just playing better cards. All right. And then lastly, sucks a fat one. The deck just sucks. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like, yes, it can win games. Yes, you can go on a 5-10 game win streak with a deck that sucks a fat one. But overall, the deck's just not good. Doesn't really do that much. And sorry if your deck ends up on there. Sorry to tell you. Alrighty, so let's start off with the first one, Goaty. We're gonna throw Goaty right in sucks a fat one, because that's where it belongs. The deck's not that great. Just a lot of outs to it. The end board it makes is like summon a level 4 pass. Sometimes you get a bit more, obviously. I'm being a little facetious when I say that, but for the most part, the deck's just not really up to snuff. And I don't think it's as good as a rogue deck. Like, if you it's not very hard to play this deck to begin with either, but like if you master this deck, like you have a certain skill ceiling that you're hitting very, very quick, right? And hitting that skill ceiling, you're just like, I just feel like you're not going to really get the results you want to get. You might have fun playing the deck. Like I said, you guys might enjoy the deck, but it doesn't change that. It just sucks. It could be argued that it could be like bottom rogue. Tier limit, I'm going to throw in tier 3. So you guys might be flipping your head, but with Merly getting banned is actually a huge detriment to the deck. Bestials are a huge component of the current meta. The top tier decks, a lot of them are playing Bestials. People are just splash Bestials in most of their decks anyway. And I'm going to tell you, having only 2 names that Confusion Summon sucks real bad. So yeah, we're going to throw this in tier 3. And I don't even think it's like, I'm not even throwing tier 3 like pure tier elements. I'm throwing it as like an engine. Like, I don't think people are really going to be playing pure tier elements. It just doesn't really seem feasible. Like, if someone Bestials one of your cards, the best you can ever end on, no matter what, is really like a Kikalios, which is not very good. It's not really where you want to be. But I think it could be good in, like, as a good engine card. Like maybe you play it in like that Chaos deck I showed you guys. I think it's going to be pretty decent. Like in some of these other like branded tier limits could be pretty good. That's why I'm putting at tier 3. I'm talking mainly about the engine. Blue Eyes sucks a fat one. I don't need to talk about this. It's a meme anime deck. Generator. So Generator, I personally think that Generator probably belongs in Rogue tier. Some people can argue that it could belong in like low tier 3, but I think it's a Rogue tier deck. It's good, don't get me wrong, but it's just like there's other decks that are just much better than it. You know what I mean? Plunder. We're on Plunder Patrol. We're gonna throw this in Sucks a Fat one. It's an okay deck. You can win games with it. I guess it could do like some cool nifty things, but the deck sucks. I mean, the engine sucks. It has to like. I've seen some people playing the runic engine with it, like some people in my community, but overall the deck sucks. I'm sorry to say. Scareclaw. We're gonna throw the thing with Scareclaw. Scareclaw can get a little scary, but right now we're gonna throw it in the Rogue tier. But this deck does get significantly better, especially with the engine being used in some other decks in the future. But this is I'm gonna throw in Rogue deck. It's a Rogue deck. It's a pretty good Rogue deck. I'd probably put out. It might be a little better than Generator. Not sure. Probably on par. It's a good deck though. Alrighty, so the next part of the tier is we're gonna go with Punk. In Punk, we're throwing a tier 2. It's gonna be our first tier 2 deck. Punk with Kashtira. Kashtira gave a big boost to the deck too. It's just a really solid deck. A lot of hand traps. So you're going to have a lot of outs to a lot of different things. I think this is an easy tier 2 personally. I can't really see how much arguments about saying this is like a tier 3 or lower. Because I think most people will say this is pretty darn good. At Emancipator, this deck went from being like a tier 3, tier 2-ish to now with Block Dragon, but it sucks a fat one. I'm going to throw it in sucks a fat one. Like, I maybe this is Rogue, but like, dude. Them losing Block Dragon is enormous. Like, not even kidding. Like, huge. Them losing it. So we're gonna throw this. I'll throw it behind Blue Eyes. Next we got Blackwing. Blackwing is gonna be interesting because I actually kind of wanted to put it like the bottom of tier 3, but I think with Bishios being so prevalent, I still think I'll throw it in the Rogue tier. It is a good Rogue tier deck though. Like, it's not a, like, just like I said, if it's a Rogue tier deck, it can win tournaments and stuff. It's a solid deck. It's just like there's a obvious weakness to the deck. So I'm gonna throw this in Rogue tier. I think Blackwings are still pretty good though. This is Runic Fur Hire. So with Runic Sprite Fur Hire, I'm gonna throw this actually in tier 2. I think it's ahead of this. So I actually think the Runic decks, and this is a general consensus from the people I talk to. Runic Fur Hire, or just Runic in general, is a very, very powerful engine, and it's virtually untouched, so I think a lot of the Runic decks do get kind of bumped up with the nerfing of the other decks. So I definitely will throw this up in tier 2. I think it's really solid. This deck's not out yet, so we're going to throw it in Sucks a Fat one. You know what? We're going to throw him in tier 0. Not out that yet, though. Thunder Dragon. So Thunder Dragon, I'm going to put it kind of at the end over here, because again, Thunder Dragon... I think it's a really good engine, and it's a really good engine in this current meta because they don't care about getting banished. So if you're playing a deck that doesn't care about getting banished, it's a pretty nice thing. Let's just say that. Thunder Dragon Colossus is still like a really annoying card too, and it deals with like Thunder Dragon Colossus is like a complete pain in the ass against Dragon Link, and we'll talk about Dragon Link later. It's a pain in the ass against Sprite. I mean, there's a lot of decks I guess do not like this card. So I think the Thunder Dragon could be argued that it's tier 3. It's really, really good right now. Sprite, we're gonna throw Sprite up. I know this sounds crazy with Sprite getting Jet limited to 1 and Swap Frog limited to 1. This deck is still gonna be a tier 1 deck. They still have both their Link monsters and their Eggsy monster. They have Jet limited to 1, which sucks. People are just going to be playing Dupe Frog with Swap Frog engine, right? This deck didn't lose as much as you think. Having Jet at 1 does suck because that means if your Jet ends up getting Bestialed when it's your turn, they're not going to have any recursion to get some of their spells back. But we've already seen some of the Master Duel Meta website, like on the Master Duel Meta tournaments. They're ready. They're still winning tournaments. Like this deck is still doing really well. It's still dominating. So, and that's with they've been playing with Jet at 1. So yeah, I'm gonna put this at tier 1. It's our first tier 1 deck, but there's gonna be a few others that join them. So Dark Magician's tier 0. Yamayugi, put it there. Best deck of the format. I'm just kidding. If you guys don't know what this deck obviously sucks a fat one, let's talk about Sky Striker. Sky Striker, I would completely argue that it is a rogue tier. I would not put it tier 3 or tier 2 or tier 1 because this deck, like again, decks that get hurt by Bestials, they do not like, they just get hurt so much on this rating scale because the top decks are going to be playing Bestials. A lot of the decks are going to be playing Bestials. And if they're playing it, they're just going to lock out your Ray, lock out your Rose. It sucks. It doesn't feel good. And I like playing Sky Striker. I really like the deck, but it's a rogue deck. It's still good. But it's a rogue deck. And I just want to make sure that you guys know, like the order I'm putting them in, most of the time I'm putting them in the order where I think it's better. But I'm not 100% sure in the rogue case. There's a lot of rogue decks, so these are kind of all comparable. But up here is going to be more accurate. I'm going to put heroes at rogue tier. The deck could arguably go to tier 3. It's really, really strong. And the fact that they have multiple floodgates, and this is a best of 1 meta, so like there's no like side decking, so they just floodgate you, and that's that. But yeah, there could be an argument it goes to tier 3 because Dark Law and Plasma are both really powerful in this meta, especially Dark Law. So I don't know. I'm gonna keep it at rogue tier though, but this is possible tier 3 move. I'm gonna put it at rogue tier actually just because of how expensive it is. We're gonna throw it in there. Dinomorphia. I know you guys love playing against this deck. I actually, if I was putting this in my list, I would like. This is obviously my list, but like if I'd probably put this tier 3, tier 2 just because I hate playing against this deck. But this deck, honestly, it's like a rogue tier. I was trolling when I said the tier 2, but I just really hate playing against like trap decks in general. Like when they go first, it's just super obnoxious. But yeah, realistically, this is probably a solid rogue tier deck. Like it's good when it goes first. Going second, it runs into the problem most trap decks run into, right? Madolche, I'm going to say this deck sucks a fat one, but it's at the top tier of sucks a fat one, and I know there's going to be a lot of haters out there, or a lot of people who say I'm hating, but you got to understand, like, I feel like just the cards are starting to out power scale, like a lot of these older cards, and Madolche is falling kind of into that bracket. Yeah, it can. The only thing Madolche has going for it is a best of 1 format, and if they blind second, they can OTK relatively easily. But I just don't think they're good enough to... I just don't think they're a rogue deck. They're just not good enough for it. It is what it is. Sorry, not sorry. Now we got Labyrinth. Labyrinth is going to be joining as a 3rd tier 2 option. Labyrinth is really strong. I know I just talked a lot of shit about trap decks. How trap decks suck ass going because if they don't go first, they lose. Trap Tricks is different. I mean, not Trap Tricks. Labyrinth is a different beast, though, because they have cards that allow them to play the game even going second. Like, they have their furniture pieces that can set up traps. They have Coup Clock that lets them play on your turn. Like, if they have Coup Clock with the traps, they can technically set up their cards, like, on turn 1, even if they're going second. So, it's kind of crazy. But yeah, that's the reason why Labyrinth is going to be at tier 2. Now Pendulum Magician, again, it's a pretty good deck, best of 1. It's going to be a lot better. Pendulum decks I feel like are a lot better in the best of 1 format. I'm going to put this at rogue tier still, but it's a decently high rogue tier. I think some of the new pen editions they end up getting, I think they use some of the new pen cards, like I think they end up getting some stuff with the Valence, like the Valence Field spell, but I think that's been around for a while. But I think Pen Magician's in a pretty good place. It's definitely a rogue tier deck. Yeah, they do a lot. But I don't know if they're up to snuff with the other Pendulum decks that just came out. But now we're going to go to Notoria. Notoria is going to be coming in as the 2nd tier 1 deck. This deck is just insane. It's like Notoria Runic is probably the most consistent out of the Runic like stun decks. I wouldn't even call this a stun deck, but like compare this to Runic Furhire, I just think this is more consistent and it's way more annoying. So I'm just going. It's a lot more sticky on the board. So yeah, Runic for Notoria Runic is going to be tier 1. It's a very, very good deck. Exo Sisters, I'm going to put this at high tier 3, possible tier 2. Hear me out. I think the deck obviously gets absolutely annihilated by Evenly Match, which a lot of decks do, but this deck gets hit pretty hard by it since they don't set up technically any negates. But this deck is known for running stun locks. Like they run the Dimension Fissure, they'll run D-Shifter, which is really strong. And the fact they can banish 4 cards in 1 turn, and all these top decks that you're seeing, a lot of them use the graveyard, and just like the fact that this deck can just shut you out from it is very... the deck is just very good against some of these other top tier decks. So that's why I'm going to put it at tier 3. It could possibly be tier 2 though. It's a really strong deck right now. Trap Tricks, Trap Tricks falls in the same problem as other trap decks. So it is going into the rogue tier. And you could say, hey Fatsoy, they can combo off now, blah blah blah. They still can't activate trap cards on turn 2, can they? No. So if they're going second, then they're still at a big disadvantage. Galaxy Photon, we're gonna throw this in Sucks a Fat One, for obvious reasons. Let's put it ahead of this though, just because it's funny. Dragon Link is tier 1. Anyone surprised that this is going to be probably the best deck in the format? I don't think so. The deck virtually got hit by nada, got 0 hits to it, and all its competition got hit. So yeah, it was already a top tier deck before, and now they hit nothing. So yeah, it's going to stay a top deck. So no, not really any surprises there. Remember all these decks that get weakened by Bestials? This is going to be a big perpetrator on why. Marine Cess. Marine Cess I am going to throw in Rogue tier. It's a pretty good Rogue tier deck. You guys know what Marine Cess does. You can set up some stun locks too. They can do like the water barrier play, where they set up water barrier with a negate and stuff. I mean, it's kind of basic shit. They're decent and they're very consistent, so that's why they're in Rogue. I'm not sure why Dino Mist is here, but we're gonna put this at tier 0. Why not? It's the best deck in the format, actually. Let's talk about Kashtira. Kashtira is an interesting one. So if we're talking about Kashtira as an engine, I would put it like tier 2 right now, because the cards are going in every deck. Like Fenrir goes in every deck, or 90% of decks, and then Unicorn goes in a lot of decks, and it makes a lot of decks better too. But if we're talking about like as a pure deck, it's like a Rogue tier deck. Like it's not very good right now. Yeah, you can combo off and do your little cheeky Diablos play and stuff, but it's wildly inconsistent, right? So this is well deserved as a Rogue tier, because what they do is very powerful, but it's pretty inconsistent. But the engine on this is like crazy good. Like the engine cards, like the Fenrir, Unicorn, are very, very powerful cards. So that could, like, if you're just talking about the engine, end up over here somewhere. Valence I'm going to throw in tier 3. I think Valence is a very powerful pendulum deck that came out. And yeah, I mean, I think the fact that this deck is able to just Lava Golem like big threats away, I actually, to be completely honest, and like this deck does not get hit really at all by the Bestials and like a lot of the Dragon Link. Like, I think I had really, really good matchups against Dragon Link when I was playing this deck, because like anytime Dragon Link would build a board, they'd build like 2, 3, sometimes they'd build like 3, 4 monsters. Like I was just Lava Golem, their most annoying threats, and just full Valence combo them. And it felt really, really powerful. And it felt super easy to OTK. So, because all their monsters are so big, so when you're pushing their cards back too, like, it feels really good. So yeah, I think this is like a top like tier 3, and maybe we can watch it a little bit, but this deck can play through so much. I'm pretty confident putting it at tier 3. It's really good. Dinosaurs we're gonna throw in the rogue tier. I mean, it's pretty good, but they're very long combos that can get easily broken up. The best thing about this deck is the fact that Miscellaneous Sword is really OP. But that's about it. It's the only card in the deck that makes the deck worthwhile. Ultimate Conducted Tyranno too is pretty gnarly. But for the most part, I'm gonna say it's a solid rogue deck. It's a pretty good rogue deck. Legendary Ocean Control, I'm going to put at rogue tier. Again, it's another rogue tier deck. It's good. If it goes first, it's really strong. You get a lot of wins. If it goes second, it's kind of poo-poo caca. So it is what it is. Evil Eye, I'm going to throw Evil Eye in the rogue tier. Decent deck. Sets up a decent amount of negates. Again, it really doesn't like getting ashed. So it definitely has like weaknesses and stuff. I don't think it deserves to be in any of these other tiers. I think rogue tier is a solid place to put it. It is better than I think most people think, though. I think a lot of people think this deck really is not that great, but it's not bad at all. Pearly, we don't have this deck yet, so I'm gonna throw it Sex Fat One because I think that's funny. Branded. So Branded's gonna be an interesting one. We're actually gonna, like, you would think with Branded Fusion going down to 1, we would like lower it, but I'm gonna put it at tier 2. I think it's still a really good deck. It's been doing pretty good in the Master Duel meta tournament still, even with them trying it at Branded Fusion at 1. The only thing that really sucks is if someone manages to banish your Branded Fusion, you're in for a rough ride. And I don't want to alarm anyone, but Runic card, like the Runic cards, like randomly banishing cards, and the Kashtira cards, randomly banishing cards off the top, like at least the pure Kashtira deck, like you end up getting to a situation where it's really, really annoying. Like, it's really frustrating to if you get your Branded Fusion hit, it just feels so bad. Like, you just want to leave the match immediately. But for the most part, a lot of decks aren't running cards like that. So I think it's going to be fine at tier 2. I think it's a really good deck, but it just has that one handicap. You hit the Branded Fusion off of these random banishes, you're sitting pretty, and they're pretty tilted. So, Tri-Brigade, it's a rogue deck. It's not a bad rogue deck, but it's definitely a rogue deck. It used to be a top tier deck back in the day, like a year ago, but not anymore. Now it's sitting back here. Does some pretty powerful stuff, but again, just the stuff is just the stuff that Tri-Brigade does just gets outclassed by a lot of these other decks now. Sword Soul, I'm gonna place right in the middle of tier 2. It's a really, really powerful deck right now. 0 hits, everything else got hit around it. Protoss is still a lot around, so I mean the deck's gonna be really good, right? It's gonna be hyper consistent and very powerful. So, yeah, I think this deck is something to watch out for. It's very, very, very good. And Protoss just absolutely cucks this deck, right? Protoss Call Dark, like Dragon Link just doesn't play. You just win insta win. So GG. Floateries, I'm gonna throw in it's tier 0. No, it's honestly I feel like Floateries is probably rogue tier, but I feel like it could be Sex a Fat One. Them having a lot of so this is the reasoning why I was thinking Sex a Fat One for a second. They're still powerful, but Extrav is getting hit too. It's going to 2 now, so that makes the deck even more inconsistent. Like you're losing out on another spell that lets you just draw extra cards, like really sucks for the deck. And the deck was already got hit like 30 times, so I think it's still fine in rogue deck. I'm pretty happy putting it at rogue. Lyserek, I'm gonna say Sex a Fat One. You just don't even bother playing it. It's just, I know, yeah, you can win some games with this. Yes, you can climb with it. Like just because the deck's in Sex a Fat One doesn't mean you can't climb with it. But it's just not that great. The stuff it does is not that powerful. Malpheus, throw it in there. This deck sucks. Do you use some of the engine cards for Sprite sometimes in a lot of the Sprite decks, but Other than that, the Melfi by itself is not that great. Bestial, if I was going to say Bestials as an engine, I'd put it like tier 1, tier 2. But as Bestial, as like Bestial Dragon Maid, I'd probably throw it in Rogue tier, right? Or even just like the Bestial, like synchro shit that some people play. I would still say it's a Rogue deck. But as an engine, it would be like top tier. Not really much to say about this. If your opponent's not playing light and dark, I mean, this feels really bad. You have to banish your own shit, so that's part of the reason. But yeah, that's I'm pretty comfortable putting him there. Dark World, I'm comfortable throwing Dark World here. I mean, it's decent. At best of one format, it's decent, but their end boards are easily breakable still. Unless you're in Bishbolkin's getting banned, so you're not going to be able to do the Bishbolkin FTK anymore. So good luck. And I really don't like Danger Engines because they're just wildly they're inconsistent for me personally because they just always hit themselves. So, Mathmech could honestly probably it's really good engine still. Like it's really good cards in it, but again they're all light. And sending Sigma to graveyard just to get it banished by a bestial monster feels really, really bad. So I'm going to put this in Rogue deck. But it's a really good deck. It's still a really good deck. Draco Slayer. I mean, not Draco Slayer. True Draco. I would put at like Rogue to Sucks a Fat One, but probably like bottom of Rogue. It's a cheap deck. It's a floodgate deck. I mean, it's really hard to like mess up a floodgate deck. Skill ceiling on this deck is extremely low, meaning that like you can do the best the deck can possibly do with not much playtime on the deck. It's not very complicated to play this deck, and the stuff it does is not particularly super powerful, but it's pretty consistent. I'll say that. But it probably can go to Sucks a Fat One, to be completely honest. I'm just throwing in here because I think it's funny that it's higher than some of these other cards. Spiral, I'm going to throw Spiral in Rogue. Problem with Spiral right now is the fact that Master Plan's a dark, so it gets sniped by Bestial, you cry, and you pretty much just scoop the game. So this definitely doesn't feel good having Master Plan getting hit like that. The good thing is the trap card that Master Plan that you send to the graveyard, the Spiral Trap card, is like you can activate as like a quick effect. So if your opponent is like, let's say, trying to banish it early and you have the trap in the graveyard and they don't notice it, you can dodge it. But for the most part, if they're not stupid, they're just going to hit this whenever you activate like a revive or a trap. So GG. Draco Slayer belongs in tier 3. I think the deck is really, really good, very consistent, puts up very powerful end boards, and I think the deck is... some of the cards are just crazy in this deck. Like, the Ignister Prominence, like, the fact that the card is not, like, a hard once per turn, and you just keep spam activating it is, like, really stupid, and I feel like a missing foresight there. It's kind of crazy, but... yeah, I feel very confident putting this at tier 3. Dogmatica Dogmatica, I feel very confident throwing this in the Rogue deck. It is what it is. It's very gimmicky, but it's pretty fun. But yeah, it's a Rogue deck. If it goes first and they get rid of your extra deck and stuff, it's kind of annoying. But yeah. And then Rika is actually going to go thrown right into tier 2. It's a really solid deck and doesn't really get hit at all by Bestials, and has a good matchup into most of these decks, and it's just really good overall. The only thing I would say about this deck is it's a little bit sacky, but for the most part they have really good recursion still. So I would say putting this at tier 2 is completely fine. Yeah, and obviously this deck didn't get any hits at all. Again, a lot of these decks that you're going to see didn't get any hits or got boosted. Like, Punk got boosted because of Kashtira. Branded just still really strong. That's why it's still up here. Labyrinth got 0 hits. I guess the only hit Labyrinth got was, like, Extrav went to 2. But for the most part, they can just play Pot of P, too. You know? It's really not the end of the world. But yeah. this is pretty much what we got going on for the tier list. I don't think, I think I'm pretty happy with where we put everything for the most part. Let me know what you disagree with down below. I'm sure we got some people disagreeing with something, but this is what I think, what after August 31st is going to be the best decks and worst decks of the format. If you guys enjoy this type of content, subscribe and go down to the link to my OnlyFans, or you can get a little naughty with it. No, join our Discord. The Discord's lit, so come on. Come do it. Come join the Discord. Thank you, and goodbye.